Thank you so much for your time today. It's really appreciated.
Sure. Thanks, man. No problem.
I will get the unprofessional bit of the interview out. I've got you on my chest, as you can see.
Oh, that's nice. That's so nice. I'm just gonna see where that looks pretty good, right? You
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
yeah, that's a great shirt you got, better than mine. So next
It's,
time I'll
it's
wear
you,
that.
it's you from when you were a young lad with that long blonde
Yes, I know.
hairstyle.
I love the mullet. It's beautiful.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats on Castle Falls.
Thank you.
I
Thanks.
watched it this morning. It's great fun. Really enjoyed it. So I wanted to begin just with how it ended up on your pile of scripts that you've read, and what made you take the decision to want to get back in the directing chair.
I always thought about directing again, but I was busy with Expendables. Then I got into, Creed 2 and Aquaman, and then I had this other film with Scott Adkins. It didn't work out for some reason, and then I started thinking, well, if I find a two-hander, maybe I could get him to finance a small movie that I'll direct, and just to see how I feel about it. And then, of course, I didn't know about COVID and being shut down for almost a year and all that, but I ended up, found a script that was set in a building, and it had like a unity of time and place where, it's almost real time, and it's more or less one location, at least 80% of the time, which made it simpler to put together. And that's when I decided, yeah, I like to see how I like it, if I like directing.
Yeah, so I spoke to Scott last year on an unrelated project, and he was saying how excited he was to be working with you, and said the same as you, that you tried to do it before and hadn't really worked out, and then COVID had hit, and you were trying to get this one made. So finally, you got to do it. So he seemed pretty excited to want to work with you.
Thanks. Yeah, he was really good. He was very dedicated. He worked on his character, and I was trying to, put a lot of subtext into it and have a chance to work with the actors prior to shooting, so that their characters are a little more solid, it has more color. Because if you work on it, start a week before, it only settles so deep, even if you're a good actor. I think for it to be interesting, you have to work on it for a few months at least. Then it settles on a level where you don't have to act so much. You just show up and you kind of just react. And that's kind of what Scott did. And I think that's why I think he's very good in the movie.
Yeah, and your character as well. I mean, obviously he's dealing with a lot of personal stuff, which is very, very heartbreaking and touching. Obviously, his daughter is very ill, and he's trying to help her get better. Was this one of the kind of strongest characters you've read for a while, in terms of just the scope and the story behind the Erickson?
Thank you. Yeah, well, the original script, Erickson was not, he didn't have that motivation, and I wanted to make both Mike and Erickson have strong motivations, and so also, sort of the bad guys or the criminals involved, that they all have different reasons for wanting this money, but it's very personal, and it's something they really have to accomplish. So with Erickson, I was thinking of trying to find the worst possible scenario where, why would somebody who's in law enforcement want to break the law or be tempted to break the law? And then I thought, obviously, with your child being sick, what are you going to do? It's like you're so desperate, he doesn't care anymore if he ends up in the same prison where he works. And I think that's why I found that I came up with that backstory, and I think it works pretty well.
Yeah, and Scott seemingly is someone that keeps you on your toes, in the sense that he's so good at what he does in terms of his action and his performance, and wants to do a lot of the stunts himself. Did that kind of help you raise your game, given that I know he's kind of like the nuclear on the block, so to speak?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I knew when I read the original script, Scott's character was an MMA fighter who was down on his luck. So I thought he was perfect for Scott, because then I don't have to explain why he can throw a roundhouse kick at somebody's head and all. It won't be so unbelievable that he could fight that way, because I wanted to keep the action believable and sort of gritty, more like stuff that would happen if it's real. And I think, the fact that Scott is very talented, and he designed the fights, he shot most of them, he was in charge of shooting them, even though I was there, but he also edited some of the fights. He's very good at that. And he's one of the few guys who can do like a 30-second take without screwing up and throwing 30 different techniques. It's quite difficult. There's only a few people like that in the game today, and he's one of them.
Yeah, and it was refreshing as well watching it and seeing the action set pieces and seeing you both and obviously the other actors doing a lot of stunts and stuff themselves. Because as you know, you've obviously done stuff like Aquaman and Expendables is a bit different, obviously, but to see you guys doing it and the believability of you guys doing it really adds an authenticity to it. Was that what you were aiming for when you were making it?
Yeah, for sure. I knew also my schedule that I didn't have time to double people. I didn't, first then I got to hire the double, and then I got to shoot it twice. To shoot a second unit and first unit, and so I hired somebody for the main adversary, to Scott, who could fight, who was a stunt guy actually. So I knew he could do his own fights. I knew I could do my own fights, and then Scott. So, and then the other guys were stunt guys. That way, it simplified things quite a bit, because in a lot of movies, not big action movies, the actor only does so much, no matter what they tell you in publicity. They can't do certain things, and very few people can throw a combination of 3 or 4 kicks to make it look good enough for a movie. Then you have to put the stunt double in. But in my case, I didn't have to do that. There was like maybe there's one shot where I have to double Scott because he's on the outside of the building hanging on, and it's too dangerous to have him do it, 12 stories up. But otherwise, it's all him.
That's cool. And in terms of you as a director, obviously you've worked with Sylvester Stallone a few times. You worked with Rowan Emmerich and so many other directors over the years. In terms of influences, what have been your influences on you wanting to be a director, even in the first time you did it?
Well, I mean, obviously, I was inspired by Stallone when I first met him, because I was 27 and he was 10 years older. He directed, he's produced, he wrote Rocky IV, he sparred with me in the ring, and he was very committed to that project. And that kind of commitment, I guess, I wanted to be able to do that. I just never got an opportunity to do it. I don't think I was ready until now, really. And then, I look at people like Clint Eastwood, who's a tough guy. People kind of underestimated him, not realizing he's an artist, and he's made some of the greatest movies ever. After the age of 60, when he did Unforgiven, it's when people kind of started realizing he was a really terrific director. So I inspired, by him, and I picked things up from Sly when he directed, or some other directors I've worked with. I worked with Sidney Furie, who is a big director. He's really old now, but he's maybe 80. But he worked with Marlon Brando and Michael Caine. And I remember he always told me that directors, things like, for instance, he said the director's first job is to create a relaxing atmosphere on set, so the actors can take chances, and to bring the actors in on the process. And really good directors like James Wan and Aquaman, he's incredibly good with the actors. He's very sensitive to what they want and how they feel, and really make them feel relaxed, because acting is not an easy job. And if the director is a little bit negative or a bit too bossy, or in my opinion anyway, you're not gaining anything by that. But I think one of my biggest inspirations would have been Clint Eastwood, because he's the guy who made that transition from acting to directing, and then from action to drama. And those are tough transitions to make.
Yeah, and he's still going. He's still going now.
Yeah, and he still got it in '91. I don't know if I can last that long, but if I can do, a tenth of what he's done, and try to make transitions, more into more dramatic stuff, and then I'll be very happy.
Yeah, and you've been doing this for a while now. I think it's like nearly 4 decades that you've been doing it. So have you enjoyed the kind of trajectory of your career from when you started in James Bond back in the mid '80s to now? Have you kind of enjoyed what you've been able to do in those 4 decades?
Yeah, I enjoy it more now than when I was in the middle of it, because some of it was tough, and I went through a lot of personal, as we all do, personal problems and divorces, and business problems, and just too much alcohol at some point. I went through all that, the actors do, but I somehow managed to pull out of it, and I feel really good now. I'm in a position where I can use a lot of those things and experience, and somehow ended up in this feeling really good about my career and having a lot of options now, which I never expected. I wanted that stuff to happen when I was 35, but I just couldn't. I didn't know how to do it. It wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. Have you been able to, I know it's only just come out, have you been able to see the Rocky 4 director's cut yet that's just come out? Have you had the opportunity to see it yet? Because I haven't been able to track it down yet, so I'm still waiting to see if it's any different.
Yeah, man. I saw it like about a week ago, finally, because I was filming. I was shooting Expendables and I was working every day, so and I was to do night shoots. Yeah, I saw it and I thought it was quite good. I thought that it was much more of a kind of a deeper and grittier movie than the original. The original is it's great. It's entertaining. It's fun. It's 80s in a way, kind of more eye candy and very very spectacular. But this one is a little more contemplative. The cut
Yeah.
now, even with my character, with Rocky, with Adrian, he's sort of he's being a bit, he's putting less on them. You have to make your own conclusion. It's not like the filmmaker saying Soviet Union is very bad, Drago is a bad guy, Rocky is an American hero. It's a little more gray in this one, which I thought he did a very good job.
That's good. Is it true? I don't know if this is true. This is going off IMDb. Is it true that you lent your voice to the new Minions film that's coming out? I think next year now, because it's been delayed so many times. Is that? Are you part of that? And how was that process? If you were?
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, I did play a character in that. It was fun. I mean, it was. It's goofy. It's kids, cartoon. But it was fun to be part of it, and it's coming out next summer, I believe.
Yes, I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was an interesting process. I'd never done that before, and how they do it. It's magical. How they kind of design the character, and then you record the voice, and then they redo the character to match your facial expressions and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you've just gone back. You said you've done Expendables 4, Aquaman 2. You've been quite busy in a year that's been a bit strange for everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, last year I only did Castle Falls. This year, yeah, I was lucky to have these two films shooting, and both in the UK. Aquaman is totally in the UK, but the other one was in Bulgaria, Greece, and the UK. But I managed to kind of do both, so I was very happy about that because Aquaman is perfect. Kind of, that's like a Swiss watch. The Warner Brothers, James Wan, the script, and then you have Expendables, just a little more of the Wild West where you change things on set, and you got all of these personalities. We had, of course, Sly and Statham, and they have like 50 Cent and Megan Fox and Andy Garcia. So that's a different type of a movie with more old school action. But I enjoyed both, really.
That's good. My final question, and as you can probably gather, my favorite film of all time features which is on here. I have a poster just down there as well, the big poster and everything else. So if you meet any friends of mine, they'll tell you that I'm obsessed with Master of the Universe because I was obsessed with He-Man when I was a kid. So anyway, but next year is 35 years since the release of that film, and even though when it first came out, it wasn't a big hit, and the canon stuff, etc., it must make you feel very delighted that even now people are still watching it on streaming, that people are still celebrating the anniversaries, and that people, it's a favorite film of so many people around the world.
Yeah, you're right. It's interesting how it takes quite some time for a movie to become a classic. It's not done in 5 years or 10 years, but it's like 20 years. I mean, Rocky IV certainly is one of them because there's something about that. The original cut, even it's not so dated. It doesn't feel 80s. It feels, it feels really current. And then Masters has managed somehow. There's something in that picture there's some kind of soul to it that is really very, very delightful. It's like one of those movies I made. One of the few ones it's not brutally violent or anything. It's entertaining, and I agree with you. People. It's almost like it had like a down period for a while when people didn't want me to sign autographs of Masters. But now it's Rocky and Masters. And then, of course, because it's current, Expendables maybe and Aquaman. But I think Masters is, it's also James Wan's one of his favorite movies.
Oh, really?
The guy who directed. Yeah, he told
really?
me
That's
that
cool to know.
when he was writing the script of Aquaman, King Nereus in the original is a bad guy, but he thought, because he has his golden armor and everything, and I guess somehow he connected. Oh, Dolph Lundgren, blah, blah. And then, that was my second audition. First one was Rocky IV. Second in my career was like 4 years ago. And because Warner Brothers didn't know if I could do it. So, he was a big Masters fan. I think he had a little sword and, the little figures back in the 80s as well. But I'm very pleased about that. And I agree with you. It's a movie that if I ever catch it by chance on TV, it's just one of those movies that's kind of nice to watch.
Yeah. I still don't know how you managed to handle that sword because it looks the same size as you.
I know. That was the beefiest I was in any movie, the most muscular, and because I came off Rocky, but I wasn't boxing so much, so I put on more weight because I wasn't moving as much. I was doing more sword play, but I mean, I got really big for that, so I did have the muscles to handle it.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. For me personally, absolute pleasure to chat to you because you're a big part of my life in some respects with Masters. So thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the best with Castle Falls.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Nice talking to you.
Take care. You too. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey, you guys!